Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Wendy Sellers here, the HR lady. I am so excited for today's podcast. We have with us founder of Feel Great with Kate, Kaitlin Bornkamp, and we're going to dive into the concept that your success shouldn't come at the cost of your health. Ooh, I think I need to re-listen to this when we get done as well. So, hey, Kaitlin, thanks for your time today. Tell our listeners about yourself and how you got to where you are now.
Hey, Wendy, thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be here. How did I get where I am today? Well, I would say along the way, I realized that so many of my colleagues, my very smart colleagues and clients, were what I like to call trading their health for their wealth. So I started out in my career in public accounting and finance consulting. I'm also CPA by trade. And so when I let my colleagues know that I was leaving to found my business, Feel Great with Kate, people were very surprised because it's not exactly your traditional career path.
No, it is
Typically,
not.
yeah. And so it really stemmed from, early on. I would say my first realization when I had the moment that kind of started things was, back when I was working in public accounting, I hired a personal trainer and he was giving me what I thought was the perfect workout plan, the perfect nutrition plan with macros. And it was at our 6-week check-in where I really wasn't getting the results or changes that I expected or that he expected to see. And he told me, he said, Kaitlin, you're never going to achieve your results if you're so stressed out all the time. And I didn't know exactly what he meant at the time because he really didn't divulge or explain what the impact of stress was, which I've learned so much more about that now. But it was then that I realized, and after that I started to realize that the same traits that made me good at my job, that made me a high performer, like ambition, perfectionism, discipline, are the same ones that were wreaking havoc on my health. So that's really where it all kind of started.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to need to re-listen to this myself like 5 times because I think I'm in the same realization here, as a business owner like yourself, you take so much on, and most of our listeners are HR, business operations, and they too end up taking on so much in the workplace just because of their function, having to be the police of the operation, but then at the same time, treating people with empathy, and we often end up putting other people in front of ourselves, including our health. And so I read a statistic getting ready for this today from worktime.com that said 72% of US workers report moderate to high levels of stress. No, really? I'm sure that's not a shocker for you. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think in public accounting, it's higher than that. I think it's like 9 out of 10 people. So to hear the 70% number, it's not surprising at all to me.
Yeah, absolutely. High achievers and HR leaders that are trying to support them. There's two parts of stress. The high achievers are stressed, and now the HR leaders or anyone else who's trying to support them are stressed. And they treat like wellness as either full commitment or total collapse. And I wanted to talk today more about like how let's ditch the all or nothing and how small wins in health fuel big wins at work. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so all or nothing thinking is something I see often. It's part of the internal roadblocks that can quickly sabotage your habits. And really, this comes in play when if you can't do something perfectly, like a habit or routine, then you're like, why would I do it at all? That's the all or nothing, conundrum that people are in. And so I find this very relevant with a lot of high performers because they're used to being able to do their job really well or being able to exceed in pretty much all other areas of their life, except when it comes to their sleep or their nutrition, or with some people, their exercise. Although I will say I found a lot of high performers seem to nail their exercise because it's like their therapy outlet. So most people, out of all the pillars of health, they don't struggle with exercise quite as much. But the all or nothing thinking, it kind of plays into when you have, like, if somebody was in the office and they bring a bagel or donuts, and then you're like, oh, well, I had a donut at 10 a.m., so my whole day's nutrition is ruined for the rest of the day, maybe the rest of the week, maybe the rest of the month, and it just kind of trickles on. Or maybe, you're like, I only have 15 or 20 minutes for workout in, so it's not even worth it. Like, I'm not even going to move my body at all because I can't get my whole hour workout in. And so I've definitely seen this backfire. I would say that this is one of the real things, like I said, that sabotages people to improve their health because it makes your standards impossible to sustain or even to hit sometimes. And there was one time specifically, it was at the beginning of this year on one of my coaching calls. I had a client who was really struggling to do what she knew she should be doing. Like she was coaching herself. She had already identified her top three priorities that she knows she wanted to be doing. And she was in the medical industry. So she knew that her performance, actually matters for her patients and who she's taking care of. And I
Right.
say that because in public accounting, our golden line was always, we're not saving lives, It's like we're not saving lives, but in some cases you are. And so for her, she knew that. And the point is that after probably 6 or 7 weeks of her just going back and forth, I finally asked her, like, when was the last time you actually met your own standards? And that was a really deep question, a really good reflection point for her. And she ended up, like sharing with us on the call and kind of crying through it in a really good, productive way. But sometimes it goes that deep. Like I would say that our tendencies to think all or nothing, there's a fear on the other side of it. Like, what is the
Right.
fear if you can't be perfect at it? Like, what happens if you do fail? And I know from my own experience, I've identified that my internal fear, isn't so much about failing. I've really been able to reframe. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you have to reframe failure. You're like, failure is feedback, which in a sense it is.
Yes.
So I don't care as much as about failing. However, my big thing is I don't want to be wrong,
Yeah.
which maybe to some people could be the same. But to me, it's like, well, I don't want to try this new supplement or I don't want to try this new habit if it's not going to be the right thing, if it's going to be the wrong thing. And so I would implore anybody listening to this, if you do identify as having all or nothing thinking, like try to identify what's on the other side of it for you. Like, what is that deeper fear or emotional driver that's causing you to be in the all or nothing thought process?
Yeah, I love it. I love the fact that, I would imagine most of our listeners who are in HR, just like in CPA world, but really any job at this point that you even have a responsibility to manage another human, never mind answer to another human and a customer, there's this thing about burnout. And, burned out employees are nearly 3 times more likely to say that they plan to leave their employer in the company in the coming year. And so, this is why we should care not only about ourselves but about the health of others, because burnout is real. Burnout will increase your health insurance claims and possibly in workers comp as well, and then you have to deal with FMLA and ADA and all that stuff, and it's very time consuming and litigious too. So talk to me about just about the concept of burnout and maybe what you went through or what we can help our listeners with.
Yeah, I definitely have been through different stages and periods of burnout. I don't think it's like a binary one and done type of thing. You're like, oh shoot, I'm burnt out again. I would say the first time I remember going through burnout was after, I think it was like my fifth tax season in public accounting. And I very clearly remember venting to one of my colleagues, and I finally had like enough of it. I was like enough of myself. I was like, you know what, Kaitlin, nobody lied to you about the long hours. Nobody lied to you in recruiting that you're going to be working busy seasons. Like obviously I was a tax accountant. I knew exactly when the deadlines were. Like it's not a surprise. And so
Right.
I think after like my fifth busy season, I was like, why am I so burnt out? It's not like a missed expectation thing where somebody lied to me and I had to work longer than I thought or whatever. And I think it was at that moment where I finally took kind of personal responsibility for my own stress and my own perception and my own like mental management, my mindset management. And so that was a really empowering place for me because it was at that point I could then decide like, okay, well, am I going to continue to show up for it? Is this what I want to do? And so I think that's really helpful. Oftentimes burnout, um, almost always burnout is a lack of feeling of control. And so in that moment, I realized the past busy seasons, I was feeling out of control. And then I had this realization where I was like, no, I'm actually in control. I chose to be here. So that's how I kind of came to that first realization. But like I said, this can happen at different points through different projects, through different, teams. It just depends on what the situation is. But I think that one thing that's important to understand is that burnout is not too much work. It's too little recovery.
Oh, very good. That's an excellent aspect, viewpoint of that. I like that.
Yeah, and I would go on to further to say for your high performers, it's definitely not that they want less work. Most oftentimes they don't want to work less because they're getting achievement and they're getting productivity and they're able to do more things. They like that. What they want is more recognition for the work that they are doing. And that's a form of recovery in the workplace is are you giving your team and your team members adequate recognition for the work that they're doing? And when I talk to teams about this, through all levels, either entry level all the way up to the partner and owners of the company, is it's really about creating a culture of recognition and gratitude because two really cool things happen. When we are the person receiving recognition, we feel much less stress. It then closes the loop of the threat that caused the burnout or the stress to begin with. And studies have shown that employees will be 20 times more engaged. 20 times, which is pretty crazy. So
Whoa.
if you want to just encourage your workforce and just make people better at their job and also enjoy it, right? It's not just about productivity for productivity's sake. Like these are humans we're talking about, right?
Right.
So
And
recognition.
I would like to say expensive humans, right? Even if they're at the lowest grade in pay in your
Yeah,
company, it's still expensive to just put an ad out there. Never mind recruit and train and put somebody through orientation, and then
yeah.
but praying that they're not going to walk out that door because they're burnt out and disengaged again. Burnout leads to disengagement. Disengagement leads to turnover. And worse than turnover is quitting and staying, saying,
Yeah,
well, I'm burned out. I'm not going to be disengaged. I'm not going to be engaged anymore. I'm going to be more slightly disengaged and less productive, but I'm still going to stay here and take your money because you didn't say two magical words to me. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
exactly.
Completely free. I talk about that in one of my books. Thank you. It's completely free, but it just needs to be sincere. Thank you for doing XYZ. I see you. I'm appreciative of you. It doesn't need to be giving them, a car.
Oh, absolutely not. No, and I only have one rule with the gratitude. If you're the one giving the gratitude, which by the way, there's a ton of great benefits to you, but if you're the one giving the gratitude, you have to be specific. Thank you
Very
for
specific. Yep.
blank. Thank you so much for taking the extra time to prepare for the important client meeting. You crushed it this morning. Like, thank you for working late last week on this project deadline. I know you didn't have to. I know it's not your responsibility, but I appreciate it. Something specific. But yeah, when you're able to identify like the team culture where people who are working hard get more recognition, it reinforces, and it reduces the burnout. And then the people giving the recognition or expressing gratitude also decreases stress. So it's this really cool continuum that we get to experience.
Right, absolutely. And again, folks, remember, thank you. It's completely free. Just be specific, be sincere. And even if you not that any of your listeners work for a bad company, but even if the rest of the company is not full of recognition and gratitude, start with your team. And then that way you could show everybody else how it's done. And then you can come back to one of our trainings at Aurora Training Advantage and learn how to give gratitude and everything else that we're talking about. Okay, so I have another question for you, Kaitlin. For somebody with zero white space on their calendar, that's you, and that's also me. What does a tailored coaching routine realistically look like? Can you walk through, what you've actually had someone do in, say, week one?
Yeah. So when I'm working with professionals for their own personal health, in week one, we're setting their goals. So we set three very specific, measurable goals. They get to choose what they are, no more than three. And then we're printing them out. They're printing them out or writing them out in hard copy and putting it in their environment in at least two places. Typically, that could be somewhere like your master bathroom, like where you're going to see it in the morning, you're going to see it in the afternoon. It could also be at your desk. Maybe it's on your fridge, just somewhere where you're going to see it in their environment. So that way it starts the mindset shifting process to allow in their goals and to allow in the
Oh,
shifts that you're going to be doing in the coming weeks. And then also what we do is they fill out the goal reflection prompts. And so that really helps them identify like what are the deeper whys related to each of their goals. And usually it goes something like this. Okay, I really want to lose 20 pounds and I want to have more energy. Okay, well, why is losing 20 pounds important to you? Well, I have some older clothes that I want to fit into and I haven't been able to wear them in, 10 years. Okay, well, why is that important to you? Well, 10 years ago I was really on top of my health and I was doing all the things I know I should be doing and my body felt better and I was happier and I had more energy for my kids. Okay, well, why is that important to you? Well, it's really important that I show up as a good mom for my kids now and my future grandkids. And that's like a completely different why and a completely different intention going into a coaching setting or a habit changing setting than just like the surface level, I want to lose 20 pounds. And so everyone has those deeper whys. And the clearer that you get on your deeper why, the more drive and the more success you'll have throughout this process of changing your habits because you'll have that to anchor on.
Do people struggle with the why?
No, not usually. No, actually, I've never had anybody struggle with it. Usually it's a pretty simple process.
Okay, very good, very good. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it, like just how you just said, talking about energy, from your excuse me, from your CPA days, you understand budgets and margins. And if energy is a resource that employees are spending, how should HR leaders and leaders in general think about budgeting for energy the way they would for any other resource that is limited?
Well, the first thing is I would actually challenge your question, Wendy, and I would restate energy as a renewable resource.
Oh, I
That
love that.
that's the good news. When given the right conditions, it's a renewable resource that depends on recovery. It depends on the culture. So HR leaders and other leaders shouldn't just budget for how much energy people spend, but they need to budget for how much recovery they're creating in the culture. And like we said before, this directly ties into the how do we combat burnout? One thing I talk about with teams is it's not so much about managing stress, it's about how can we make ourselves more stress resilient.
Oh, I like that too. I love
Yeah,
these
there's a,
words.
there's a lot of really great psychology that's super interesting. And it talks about like one thing I like to think for myself is when I'm feeling stressed out, how can I reframe the stressor to be a challenge? Instead of me perceiving it as a threat, how can I perceive it as a challenge that makes me lean in and actually try to be like, and my personality is competitive. So where I might be stressed out initially, I'm gonna have less energy, I'm gonna have less motivation, I'm gonna maybe overthink things because my perfectionism is gonna come in. But if I can perceive it as a challenge, then I'm going to be way more energized, more motivated, and in my best self, competitive in a really like, hopeful way to bring my best self. Um, but it really does come down to thinking of it as like, how can you enable your workforce, your employees to take care of themselves? Because I got to tell you what, like one thing that
Mm.
surprised me when I got into the personal coaching world is I thought most people just like didn't know what to do. Like they're like, I don't know, I'm too busy, blah, blah, blah. Like I don't know what I should be doing. But I'll tell you what, they know at least 10 solid things that they could or should be doing. Probably more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so important for our listeners again who are in the HR and leadership space. Talking about like these comprehensive wellness strategies as well. Even if your company doesn't have a wellness program, lean on resources that you can, community resources, your employee assistance program if you have one, your health insurance program. There's a statistic from Holistic Care from last year, 2025, that wellness programs generate $3.27 in medical savings and $2.73 in absenteeism for every $1 invested. So that's over, five, almost $6 that they generate in reductions of lost productivity, lost engagement, lost, customer service just by spending $1. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
see, I know so many companies see, oh, great, here comes Wendy, the HR lady. She's going to want me to, put in another benefit, another program. And it's like, again, thank you's free. It's time consuming. Wellness programs might be a little costly, but they're going to save you money down the end. So for our listeners, sell that upwards. Make sure they're not just looking at it as a cost or an expense, but make sure that they're looking at it as what can we get out of this? And maybe if they're those people that don't have enough empathy for their employees, they can look at it in a different way with the black and white numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing I would add on there to the list of things that companies can do, it won't cost you any more money. It might cost you a little bit of time as a program, but really understanding the working norms. So what are the ways in which teams are working together? So for example, like culture flows downhill usually, right? Like it starts at leadership and that can be at any level of a team. So typically people will just defer to whoever the most senior person is around them. And so, for example, like if you have an executive or a VP or a partner who's answering emails at 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. or on vacation, that just becomes the expectation. everyone else who's getting those emails or whatever else the example is secretly wondering or feeling pressure that like, oh crap, do I need to be checking my emails on vacation? And these are just the, death by a thousand paper cuts kind of leading to this overwhelm, leading to that lack of control, where then obviously with technology nowadays, we feel like we can never shut off. And just to kind of connect it back to, the question you asked at the beginning, where how did I kind of realize or how did I get into this? Around that same time where I had my first realization, I very specifically remember I was working on a team and a senior manager who was like one of the top performers in our office, like super smart, super high performer, like never missed anything. Also really great to work with. Like honestly, just kind of a gem. You get those rare people. And what happened is he had a medical emergency. Fortunately, he was okay. But the point is that while he was in the hospital, he was checking email from his hospital bed.
Oh,
Right. And so it's like that really left me wondering, like, how, like, what is this all for? It's like, how is it really that important? Of course, he had coverage on his team, but I don't know what he was feeling in that moment, right? Like, was it lack of control that he needed to feel back in control? Maybe he felt out of control with his health, and so his default was to feel productive and work. Maybe, maybe he didn't want to ask for help because he was already feeling helpless. I mean, there's so many different patterns that were probably running for him, but I would just implore any leaders or HR leaders listening to this that it also matters like the working norms. What are the little things that people are cueing each other? What has the company normalized? What is acceptable versus not acceptable? Like another example was early in my career, and again, my previous employer, the culture has changed a lot and really great company, but that team specifically, so there can be micro cultures on smaller teams.
yes.
In the microculture that I worked for, it was like we had what was it? It was before Teams. It was another, I'm forgetting. It was like same time or something, back in the day,
Hmm.
the technology of the pinging. And so it would tell you exactly how many hours each person was online or offline for. And so
Ooh.
the managers would literally log on every morning and then like scout out how long it had been that each staff was offline for. And it was like, God forbid you went over like 14 hours of being offline from the night before, 17 hours.
My
It's like, oh
goodness.
my
For the
goodness.
folks that are listening, you can't see, but my mouth's hanging open right now, going, oh my goodness, it's so wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, and there was one girl who she worked there before I came in, but I remember everybody like, complaining about it and talking bad about it where there was a couple of days where she had gone to take her lunch break and went to a yoga class and everybody was like crapping all over it. Like they were so upset, probably also partially jealous that she was
Right?
that she was taking charge of her health and, I don't know what missed expectation there was, but it was like from my view, she was taking 1 hour at lunch. Like, what's the difference between her going to move her body at yoga and probably having like a smoothie or a snack versus somebody else taking an hour to go sit down at, their local pub down the street?
Yeah.
Um, so it really does matter the culture and what people have normalized at the grander company and the micro team level.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's kind of what I was getting at before. Like I don't really care what the culture is of your company. We can't always change the culture from where we sit, but we could change the culture on your team. Even if you just have one employee, even if it's you're the only team, you could again
Mm,
focus on what Kaitlin is saying about stress, being resilient to stress, using energy as a renewable resource, and then don't forget recognition and gratitude and to yourself too, just saying, hey, I had a
yes.
big project and I finished it on time, under budget, or I had some hiccups and I still got it done and people are happy with it. And we have to learn to kind of give ourselves that little pat on the back as well, and that is part of your own kind of therapy and wellness program, right?
Absolutely.
So my final question here before we wrap up is if an HR listener leader today who's listening wanted to bring the mindset into their organization about these wellness benefits, what's the one thing that you tell them to stop doing and then one thing to start doing?
Okay, Wendy. Well, I don't mean to offend you, but I would tell them to stop adding more benefits and, and start encouraging and helping them utilize the existing benefits to actually
I'm s-
promote.
I'm actually so happy you said that because I wanted to actually go back to before when we were telling that person, hey, I recognize you. Thank you for working extra hours. I want to follow that up by saying, why don't you take Friday off? right?
Love that.
Especially if they're salaried. You already worked, 70 hours. You only are required to work 40 or maybe 45, depending on your company policies. But why don't we, as managers and as HR, start encouraging people to use that giant bank of time off that nobody ever gets to use or chooses not to because they feel like their culture doesn't allow that, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. They
All
feel
right. So
guilty. They
number
feel
one
pressure.
is stop adding more benefits and start using the ones that we have.
Yeah. I mean, because this goes into what I call a lot of companies suffer from the list of link syndrome. Because I work again, like I've worked for a company that has amazing benefits, and it really comes down to your most your next level manager, and are they enabling you to take effect of them, or to utilize them rather. And so it's important to ask yourself, like as a leader, as a manager, or even if you're just managing yourself, like does your firm or culture support professionals to actually use these benefits? And to your point, encourage people to actively do that. I mean, I could think of one specific simple thing that a company could do today. Um, so I spent many years in a management position, and it wasn't until I left corporate America and actually started to research, some of these same topics that you're interested around. What's the intersection of employee well-being, company benefits, saving money, like all these good stuff. And that was the first time I ever learned about the topic of absenteeism, which you've already talked about, and I'm sure you talk about all the time. And I was like, why, as a people manager, was I not ever informed or educated on that? Because, like you're saying, it's important to be aware of recognizing the signs and symptoms of burnout, which again, I wasn't educated on that either. I had taken, gosh, I can remember at least three distinctive trainings that I took on quote unquote how to manage stress. I really don't like the term manage stress, but the
Right.
point is that that would have been an appropriate training for me to learn more about, burnout is result of loss of control. Here's how it can show up, absenteeism. Here's how you're empowered as a manager. Really, you're kind of just left, in my experience, to kind of figure it out or just to do what you've seen other leaders do. And, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Like if you've worked for
Right.
some great leaders, good job. If not, then you might not become a great leader.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that employee well-being isn't a program; it's an action, and it's an action that we're all responsible for, whether you're a manager or not. Just checking on your coworker, and even if you're competitive with the, oh, I work more hours than you, like, okay, you're going to crash and burn and possibly leave the company. And in fact, another statistic that I was looking at from the Well Hub Work Life Wellness in 2026 said that 85% of employees would consider leaving a company that does not prioritize well-being. It doesn't talk about health insurance. It doesn't talk about employee assistance program. It doesn't talk about a nutritional coach. It just says, do you prioritize me as a human who needs to be well in order to work for you? And if you don't, and if you're turning down my PTO time or my sick time request or whatever, I said, well, then you're not obviously prioritizing it, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah,
It's so,
100%.
so important. This has been such great information. I'm going to remember that, to become stress resilient, energy as a renewable resource, and to continue focusing on recognition and gratitude of everybody who we come into and encounter, including even the servers, or who are giving us lunch. So feel great with Kate. Are there any resources that you'd recommend for listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, definitely. So I know everybody out there always answers the question of like, what's for dinner or what am I going to eat this week? So if you want that completely solved, then reach out to me. Go to Feel Great with Kate on Instagram, and I will send you over a free done for you high protein meal plan and recipe. And if you want, I'll also include my free AI prompt where you can actually customize the plan completely to your goals and to your preferences. So that's something that I created for clients this year. And I just love to give it away because if all you need to know is what to eat, then that solves it for you. But if you'd also like help with implementing any other habits or working through some of the mindset blocks that you may be experiencing, then you can also follow me on Instagram, send me a DM, and we'll talk about your personal health goals.
Excellent. I'll make sure that her Instagram and her website is posted in the podcast notes, as well as I'll tag you on LinkedIn too, because I could tell you one thing. As soon as we hang up, I'm going to Instagram to find this out myself. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. And, definitely carry on of being stress resilient and renewing your energy.